Hi there, my name is Susan Ibach, or Hockey Geek Girl on Twitter, and I want to show you today how you can take your Windows Phone app and control what keyboard your user has when you're using your application. What I have here is a very simple application. It's one I'm using to help me with my running. I enter a number of minutes and seconds that I want to run on a treadmill in terms of per kilometer. So I want to run a kilometer in 5 minutes and 30 seconds. And the application is going to come back and it's going to tell me what pace I should set the treadmill to, because treadmills require me to enter a pace in miles per hour or kilometers an hour. But I'm having a little problem with the application right now. When I go ahead and run it, and I go to enter the pace I want to run, I notice that when I try to type in minutes, it's bringing up an alphanumeric keyboard. Well, the alpha keyboard, really. And I have to go click on the 1, 2, 3 button to be able to enter my numbers. I want this application to be as easy as possible for someone to use, so I'd like to display the numeric keyboard automatically, since I know they're going to be entering numbers in this field. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something called the InputScope. Now, just give me a second here while I reverse this and hide my WYSIWYG, because I want to focus in on the XAML. So I'm going to go to my minutes text box, and if we zoom in a little here so you can see a little more closely, I can go in and I'm going to add a new attribute called InputScope. And I can set that InputScope to a number of different values, and in this case, I specifically want to set my InputScope to number. This is a way of saying when somebody's inside this text box, then only allow them to enter numbers. This is going to change the keyboard that actually appears. And if I go ahead and run my application now, we should see inside the emulator, just takes a second to come up, that sure enough, now when they're inside the minutes text box, they can only see the numeric keyboard. This is going to make life easier for my user. So just changing your input scope, already simple thing you can do in your applications to make your application easier to use for all of your users out there. If you're curious what other input scopes you can set, I'm just showing you numeric here with a value of number. You can always look up on devwindowsphone.com, and there's a great page here inside the MSDN documentation that shows you all the different input scopes you can choose from. So you can scroll down and you can see that the text input scope, the value you see in green on the right here, that gives you a typical text keyboard. If somebody's going to be entering an address, and then you can specify addresses, address country names, and so on. A slightly simpler keyboard. If you know somebody's going to be entering an email address, then you can specify an input scope of email name or address, email username, any of these different choices. And then they get the .com appearing in the keyboard, which speeds things up in their typing. If you specify an input scope of URL, then again, you get the .com ability. You just don't get the @ symbol that we had with email. For name or phone numbers, you can include periods and commas to make it a little easier. For addresses, again, you can have different symbols for address street, currency amounts, postal addresses. Or time gives you colons automatically on the main keyboard. Or you can display the telephone keypad. And this is the one I chose. I used the input scope of number, so I received the numeric keyboard. And the last one is if you want to include actual suggestions for things like autocorrect and so on, you can use maps or search. And finally, there's one for formula and one for chats as well, which has a little emoticon. So you've got lots of different choices. Picking the right keyboard's going to make your app easier to use and therefore more popular with your users. A simple way to kick your apps up a notch.